Well, hello, everybody. Thank you so much for coming out to our very first Women in Faith session for this spring. My name is Stephanie Schwartz. I'm the Director of Women's Ministry here at Compass. Very gracious. I've actually been here as the Director of Women's Ministry since the church began in June 2005, so a long time. And I love the church, I love this ministry, and I'm so happy to have you all here. We have typically on Tuesday nights our women's Bible study that takes place in the auditorium, but they're off tonight. But you'll find it to be more crowded on the consecutive nights because our women's Bible study, we have Tuesday morning, Tuesday night, and Wednesday morning meetings, but collectively we have almost 1,000 women that come to our women's Bible study, yeah. And then we have our Navigating Motherhood program that meets on Thursday mornings and Friday mornings, and we have a little over 200 that are coming to that. But this Women in Faith ministry, I feel like is my favorite ministry of all of our ministries. We're going to meet for 11 weeks, and we're just going to think through basic Christian truth. And I know for me, it's always helpful every time I get the chance to do this to think through basic Christian truth because it's so good to know what you believe and why you believe it. Or if you have questions, to ask questions about what's brought up, things that might be confusing to you, things that you don't understand. This is not a place where you have to come with the right answer. We don't have homework. We don't have anything like that. We come, we listen, and we discuss. And again, it's an opportunity for you to say, you know, this is confusing to me, or this doesn't make sense to me, or I have a different take on that. And those things are all valuable to us. We want to hear from you. We are confident that every single one of you is here for a reason, that God has brought you here for a reason. You're super important to Him. You're important to us, and we want to be able to hear from you in our discussion group time. So this session, our first session, is going to be our most basic session, and yet in a sense, it's the foundation for all of our other sessions. So even though it might feel like, oh, this is really basic and I know these things, we want to remember that each session builds upon the last one. So there's a reason, there's a plan, there's a purpose in the order that we're taking here. But this session is called In the Beginning, and we're going to think about how we got here. Now, as I mentioned, we're going to meet for 11 weeks. So I would love it if you could make it to all 11 weeks. I know things will happen. You'll have things that come up, or there'll be sickness or whatever, but if you could do the best you can to make it to all 11 weeks, like I said, there's that progression there, and it's just so fun for us as a community to have you all here for those 11 weeks. And I have a picture of someone taking notes because we've given you those packets, the workbooks, to fill your notes in over the 11 weeks. And as you're filling the notes in, I'll put up slides with prompts to fill in from your workbooks, and you can write down whatever you want. But we want you to write down what's really on your heart. If there's something I say and you feel like I just disagree with that, note it down and talk about it in your group time. If there's something that works for you or makes sense to you, note it down. Make sure and be honest about how the information is working for you or not working for you. And again, that's something that you can discuss in your group time. So we're going to answer the question, or attempt to answer the question, can we be sure that God exists? Can we say, we are confident that there is a God, that God exists? And I think the best way to do that is to begin by saying, well, what if there is no God? If there is no God, what would things be like? What would we have to believe? What would we have to concede to be true if there is no God? And the first thing that I'm going to bring up is if there is no God, we would have to admit that everything came from nothing. that everything we see, everything in this room, everything in our city, everything in our earth, everything in the universe, it all came from nothing if there is no God. Those who say that there is no God, they will say that they believe everything came from matter and energy that was compressed at one point. Some say down to the size of a pinhead, others say the size of a soccer ball, and others will say the size of a small pumpkin. About 14 billion years ago is the current estimate, I think 13.8 billion years ago, but that there was this time about 14 billion years ago where everything, we're talking the entire universe, was compressed to the size of a soccer ball, and then it just all blew up. Now, you might wonder, in thinking about that, and people have wondered, where did that matter and energy come from? The matter and energy that was compressed to the size of a pinhead or a soccer ball or a small pumpkin, whatever it is, where did that come from? And the response that you'll get is, don't go there. I've heard people asking Neil deGrasse Tyson, who's a famous astrophysicist, where did it come from? Where did that matter and energy come from? And he will respond, I've heard him respond to questioners saying, no, don't even go there, because there's no answer for it. Nobody knows. There's no good answer for that at all. No one knows. Now, there are a couple problems with this idea. The first is a few scientific problems. For example, the first law of thermodynamics, this is a scientific law, and don't worry, we're only going to spend a few minutes on these scientific laws. But the first law of thermodynamics states that energy can neither be created nor destroyed. It can only change form. So you have energy in a closed system like the universe. It can't be created or destroyed. It can only change form. Now, I went to Cal State Long Beach, and I have an undergraduate degree in chemistry. So in chemistry, I took a lot of math classes, I took a lot of physics classes, and I remember going into a physics class once, and the teacher there, his name was Dr. Kumar, and I had just become a Christian at the time. Before that, I was not a believer, but I had just become a Christian, and he came into class and he said, today we're going to learn about the second law of thermodynamics. We're going to learn about entropy and the fact that there is a God. And I was thinking, wow, I'm at Cal State Long Beach, and I've just become a person of faith, and the teacher is now teaching us from science that there is a God. And this is what he explained. The second law of thermodynamics, remember, the first is that matter cannot be created or destroyed. Energy cannot be created or destroyed. The second is that in a closed system, in an isolated system, the entropy, which is another word for disorder. When you hear entropy, just think of disorder, randomness of a system will increase or remain constant over time, and that is unless acted upon by an outside force. So that might seem super confusing. I'll clarify it really quickly, but you'll see what the problem is. There's a picture there of entropy. The little guy on the left-hand side with the clean shirt, his disorder is low. His entropy level is low. The entropy is increased in the next guy. You see the disorder there, just the chaos there. So left to itself without an outside force acting upon it in a closed system, such as the universe, the entropy, the disorder will increase over time. Let's say I have a jigsaw puzzle. I've got this jigsaw puzzle, and I spread this puzzle out on my kitchen table, and then we decide that we're going to go on vacation. So we go on vacation to Maui, and we get delayed, and we come back 50 years later. If we come back 50 years later and the puzzle looks like this, I will know that an outside force acted upon that puzzle, right? Because left to itself, the puzzle is not going to become more ordered. More ordered would be a decrease in entropy. Now, the puzzle in time could look like this, but the puzzle left alone is not going to become like this. And that is the second law of thermodynamics. So if you think about it, what the teacher was saying, if we look at the universe, and we look at the way things are, we're assuming that things became more ordered without an outside force acting upon them, and that violates the second law of thermodynamics. Done with that section. There are also philosophical problems when it comes to the fact that there is no God and everything came from nothing. There's a philosophical argument called the Kalam cosmological argument, and it says, this is a tested, tried philosophical argument. It says whatever begins to exist has a cause. So if something begins to exist, it has a cause. You feel like, wow, brilliant. Yes, brilliant. For example, we have a car. The car exists, therefore the car has a cause. The soccer ball exists. The soccer ball has a cause. The earth exists. Therefore, the earth has a cause. And the same is true with the universe. The universe we know began to exist. Therefore, the universe must have a cause. And again, that is the Kalam cosmological, a philosophical argument. If something exists, it has a cause. The universe began to exist, therefore the universe has a cause. Now, the next thing, if there is no God, we would have to admit that life came from non-life. Thinking about that explosion or whatever it was, all that matter and energy, the size of a pinhead, soccer ball, small pumpkin, large pumpkin, whatever it is, long periods of time, and life came from non-life. Now, that's hard to say. We're saying that matter plus energy plus time plus chance, remember, 14 billion years, long periods of time, somewhere along that process, life came from non-living matter. And scientists call that abiogenesis, that life comes from non-living matter. The problem is that no one can explain how or when or why. Did it happen on the earth? Did it happen in the depths of the ocean? Did it happen in the atmosphere? Did it happen in space? When did it happen? How did it happen? When did non-living matter become living matter? And again, no one knows. No one has an answer for that. So where did everything come from? No one knows. How did life come from non-life? No one knows. No one knows. There's also what's called the fine-tuning of the universe. That is constants, laws of nature, constants like the speed of light, the proportion of electron to a proton, the force of gravity, these constants in nature that if they were even slightly different would not allow for life, to occur. And these things are so complex, and even one slight variation in these constants and everything would not be as it is today. Now, this is one that's interesting. But if there is no God, and think with me about this, if there is no God, then that means there is no true meaning and purpose in life. No God, no true meaning and purpose in life. There just isn't, and you have to be good with that. Because if there is no God, then that means that our existence is the result of random chance over long periods of time, right? We've got that compressed material. It blew up 14 billion years ago. Things collided and collided and collided. Life came from non-life, and we have what we have today. We have our existence, and it's the result of random chance. We came from nothing. we die, and we return to nothing. So if we came from nothing, and we die and we return to nothing, then if we're honest, we would have to say, you know what? There is no real meaning for any of it. There is no real purpose in any of it. If we came from nothing and we return to absolutely nothing, it wouldn't matter if you were a dolphin or a dog or a dragonfly. It wouldn't matter. It wouldn't make a difference because you came from nothing. You're going to die and you're going to return to nothing. So nothing would really matter. There is no real meaning and no real purpose for life. It's all going to end. A few billion years, the sun's going to swallow up the planets in our solar system. And what difference will it all make? No God, no meaning, no purpose for all of this. Again, what difference would it make? Why do we sacrifice? Why would we sacrifice for somebody else? If I see this older woman crossing the street and struggling with her 2 heavy bags, what difference would it make if there's no cameras there, no one would ever see me, and if I walk up to her, smack her in the head and grab a bag? What difference would it make? I came from nothing. I'm going to return to nothing. Why would that have any meaning or any purpose behind it? Why would it make a difference if I help her across the street? Why would her life make a difference? If I helped her out, why does her life matter? Why is there a purpose for her life? Why is there a purpose for any life or meaning for any life if we come from nothing and we die and we return to nothing? And if you think I'm pushing this too far, this is what leading atheists would agree to today. I have a couple quotes up here, one from James Watson, a leading atheist. That is someone who's not agnostic, who doesn't say they don't know, but this is someone who says they're convinced that there is no God. He says we are not here for anything. That's no meaning and no purpose. We're just the products of evolution. And Richard Dawkins, probably the most famous of today's neo-atheists, he says, all we are is machines for propagating DNA. He says it's every living object's sole reason for being. Your only reason, your only purpose for being is just to propagate DNA, and that's it. And that's the conclusion that you have to come to. If you're honest and you say, we came from nothing, we die, and we return to nothing. There is no meaning. There is no purpose in all of this. And yet the weird thing is that just grates against the way that we think and the way that we act and the way that we behave. I mean, think about literature and music and art and science. We love the hero. We love the one who has meaning, who has purpose, who does the right thing. Why would we love that? Why would we be drawn to that? If there's no purpose for our existence other than propagating DNA, it would not make sense. Who cares what your role is in life? Whether you're a mom or a teacher or a doctor, whether you help people or whether you end up in prison. What difference would it make if you came from nothing and if you're going to return to nothing? Now, the next thing is if there is no God, then there is no real, and by real I mean objective, outside of us, there is no real right or wrong. There is no such thing as real right or wrong if there is no God. Whose values would be right and whose values would be wrong? How would you know? You say, well, I think this is right. Well, what if someone else doesn't think that's right? Are there real values of right and wrong? Are there real objective things that are always right and always wrong? Or does it just vary from culture to culture? Do you believe that it's wrong to murder? Do you believe that it's wrong to exterminate a people group? Well, what if another culture doesn't believe that? Is there real right and wrong? And we believe that there is real right and wrong. But if there is no God, if there we're just left to coming from nothing and returning to nothing, then there is no real right and wrong. It's just something that we fabricate during the time that we spend on this planet. There's no real good and no real evil. We might say, oh, this is always good. This is a good thing. This is a lovely thing. Or this is evil. This is wrong. This should not take place. This needs to be punished, so to speak. But that's just subjective. That's just something that we made up. There's not something real behind it, nothing objective behind that, if there is no God. We can't really condemn wrong and praise the right if there is no God, because we're just condemning what we think is wrong and praising what we think is right. But we're not giving freedom to someone else to say, well, I don't think that that's wrong, and I do think that that's right. Again, if someone decides, if a culture decides that an entire people group should be exterminated, who are we to look in and say, you're wrong? You're wrong in what you're doing if there is no God. If there is no God, what difference would it make if you spend your life, let's say, in pursuit of loving God and loving other people, or you spend your life in pursuit of yourself and doing what makes you happy? What difference would it make? You came from nothing and you go to nothing. It would not make any difference. And again, if you think I'm pushing this too far, this is what the leading atheists would agree to. Richard Dawkins has said, the universe that we observe has precisely the properties we should expect if there is at bottom no design, no purpose, no evil, no good, nothing but pitiless indifference. And that's the conclusion you have to come to if you're honest. If you say, I believe we came from nothing, and I believe we die and we go to nothing. If you really believe that, then you have to admit there's no meaning for life, there's no purpose in life, there's no real good, and there's no real evil. These are things that we've just made up. If there is no God. If there is no God, we shouldn't act like there's meaning and purpose to life. But the weird thing is we do. We all do. Throughout human history, we do. If there is no God, we shouldn't think that there's real right and wrong, something that's always commendable and something that's always detestable. But we do. If there is no God, we certainly shouldn't feel guilty about anything. But the problem is we do. We do. We value things like love and kindness and brotherhood. And we see that it's not something to be valued when we see things like hate and murder and war. Why is it? Why do we feel this way? What is in us that's driving us to do this? Why in the world would we be willing to sacrifice our good for the good of another human, especially if that human wasn't related to our DNA, right? I could see if it was propagating our DNA, but if they're not connected to us in the DNA terms, why would we do something? Why would we sacrifice our good for the good of someone else? It would make no sense if there is no God. Are we fooling ourselves? I mean, when we feel like there's meaning and purpose, when we feel like there's right and wrong, when we value things like love, when we value brotherhood, when we value peace, are we pretending? There is one way that I think atheists often pretend, and that is they'll say things like Mother Nature. You watch shows that are put out by atheists, and they can't say random chance. The beauty of random chance has created this. And so they'll personify random chance and say, this is just a result of Mother Nature. Now you're trying to personify Mother Nature, and that makes no sense. You're trying to give a personality to nothing. Or people that say, I'm just going to send my prayers out to the universe. I'm praying to the universe. I'm going to send some love to the universe, as if the universe is personified, as if the universe can hear you or respond back to you. There's something innate within us that knows that there really is a God. And that's why people who even say there is no God will use terms like Mother Nature or sending thoughts out to the universe. So let's look at it from the other side. Let's say if God does exist. If God exists. If God exists, then we were created in his image. That's what the Bible teaches. If God exists, we were created in his image. The very first verse in the Bible, Genesis 1:1, says, "In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth." So we take it all the way back and we see that God was behind all of this. In the beginning, there was God, and God created. And then also, first chapter of Genesis, Genesis 1:27 says, God created man in his own image. In the image of God, he created him. Male and female, he created them. So God created human beings, male and female, and he created them in his image. Now, in his image doesn't mean that he looks like us. It doesn't mean that he has a physical body the way that we do, but it means that our soul has characteristics or attributes that are reflective of who God is. We have things like intellect. We can think. God created us in his image. He created us with the ability to think because he thinks. He created us with emotion, the ability to feel because he feels. He created us with will, the ability to make choices because he makes choices. And in this sense, we were created in the image of God with intellect, emotion, and will. And that means that our lives do have real meaning and real purpose, true meaning and true purpose. Our lives have meaning and purpose because if there is a God, the Bible says, for example, that we were created in his image. Being created in his image means that we have value, we have meaning, we have purpose. It means that all human life is valuable and equally valuable. Every single human being is valuable before God. We're all fully human and equally human. One of us can't be more human than another. Every single person has incredible worth before God because every single person has been created in his image and bears his image. He created us on purpose, each one of us, and each one of us for a specific purpose. He has a purpose for us because he created us. He created us for a purpose. And that means also that there really is real or objective right and wrong. There are things that are always right, and there are things that are always wrong. There's real, objective, right and wrong, because it's God who sets the standard for what's right and what's wrong. What's right and wrong comes from his character, from his nature, from who he is. He can say this is right and this is wrong. He's the measure of what's right and wrong. We don't have to drift from one culture to the next to try to determine what right and wrong is. We can say God is the one who determines what real right is and what real wrong is. C.S. Lewis said in his book, Mere Christianity, a man does not call a line crooked unless he has some idea of a straight line. He was saying that we can't say that something's wrong unless there is a real right. And to say there is a real right means that there's a real deviation from that right or a crookedness, and that's wired within us. We know deep down in our core that there are things that are really, genuinely, truly, objectively right and objectively wrong, and that's because God exists and he created us in his image. We long. We want to know what our purpose is in life and what the meaning is of life. We want to know what the right thing is to do and what's the wrong thing to do. And we want to know all of that because God exists and because he created us in his image. So the rational conclusion is God exists. There is a God. It takes far more faith to believe that there is no God than to believe that there is a God. Because everything that we feel and we experience lines up with the fact that God exists. We have to almost defy logic in what we see and what we experience internally to say that there is no God. So you might be wondering, well, then why doesn't he just kind of like appear to us and talk to us? Well, the reason why is we don't know what we're asking when we ask for something like that. He is God. Remember, he doesn't look like us. He did give us, grace us with intellect, emotion, and will, being created in his image, but he is outside. He's outside of the universe. He's outside of time and space. We can't imagine what it would be like to actually behold God as he is. And yet at the same time, he has appeared to us. He's appeared to us through the creation. We see all of his work. We see everything. We see the grandeur and the glory of humanity, of the earth, of the heavens. We see his works and we say, this could not have come here without any force acting upon it. This could not have come from nothing. And the conscience that he's given us, where he's allowed us to see that, yes, there is meaning and purpose in life. There is real right and wrong in life. Even if there were no cameras, we shouldn't go hit that older woman over the head and steal her bags. We know it's not right because God exists. There's a verse in the New Testament, Hebrews 3:4, that says, every house is built by someone, but the builder of all things is God. What that's saying is, you look at something like a house and you realize house is built by someone. You wouldn't drive by that house and think, yeah, random chance, long periods of time, and the house just appeared. But we're saying that so much more than that us as humans, our children, the earth, everything, random chance, long periods of time, it makes no sense. Creation reveals God to us and our conscience too. For example, with this little baby, we know innately that there are certain things that you don't do to this baby, or certain things that you do for this baby, because God has created us in his image, and we all know that. It's part of the human experience. We have that conscience. God has revealed himself to us through creation and through our conscience and shown us that he does exist. And again, that it takes more faith to believe that he doesn't than he does. I have here a picture of Catalina right off the coast, and I walk along the coast in the morning, and usually it's grayed out. There's fog or smog or clouds or whatever, but it doesn't mean Catalina's not there. Catalina is there, although you can rarely see it anymore, probably because of the pollution, but it's there. Just because you don't see something the way you want to see it doesn't mean that it's not there. When we see a pot, we don't have to say, I need evidence, I need proof, I need to see the potter to know that someone made this pot. No, we look at the pot and we say, a potter made this pot. I can do the logic there. There is a pot because there's a potter, and the potter made the pot. Just like God created us. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. And the potter can paint those pots any color that he wants to paint them. Does the potter have the right to paint any color he wants to paint? Sure, of course. He's the potter. He's the creator of the pots, right? He's the one that made them. Does the potter have the right to paint polka dots on the pots or paint stripes on the pots? Do whatever he wants to do with the pots? Sure. If the potter paints polka dots on the pots, we can't call the police and say, come arrest the potter, he painted polka dots. It's his pot. He can do whatever he wants to do with it because he owns it. He made it. If the potter finds a crack in the pot and he doesn't like the pot, he can throw the pot on the ground. He can smash it and put it in the trash if he wants to because he owns it. Because he made it, because he's the potter, because he has authority over it. And in the same way, God has authority over us. If God exists, that means that he has authority over us because he made us. He created us. He has the right to do what he wants to do with us. Again, as our creator, as the one who owns us. If he wants to crush us and throw us in the trash, he has the right to do that. He wouldn't be doing anything wrong if that's what he wanted to do because he made us. Because he's our creator, because he has that rightful authority over us. So we need to say, okay, if God is our creator, if we realize that it takes more faith to say there is no God than to say there is a God, and the logical conclusion is that God exists, God created us in his image as our creator. He made us. He can do what he wants to do with us. He has authority over our life. We got to discover, God, what is it that you desire for our lives? I mean, what is it that you want us to do? If you made us and you own us, we need to say, God, what do you want me to do with my life? What is it that I'm here for? What do you desire from me? What would it look like for me to be a pot that's pleasing to you? To be someone that's living a life that's consistent with what you would want life to be? And then we have to ask, well, can we even know what God desires? Has he revealed to us what he desires? And the answer is yes, he has. But we got to look at that next week. So you guys got to come back next week so we can continue this conversation. I have really enjoyed opening it up with the beginning, thinking about the fact that God exists. Again, I would encourage you to ask the questions that you have in your group time. Don't feel bad if you disagree with what I said or you have questions about what I said. Just ask the questions that you have. Let me pray for you all. God, thank you so much for this wonderful group of women that I truly believe you have chosen to be here with us through these sessions. God, I pray that you would just reveal to each woman in this room how very, very important she is to you. I pray that you would let her know that she has great meaning and purpose and value, and that you have a plan for her life, and you've had a plan for her life. God, I pray that you would allow these women, these precious women, to ask the questions that they have, to engage in the conversations that they would want to have. I pray that you would lead us and guide us and direct us all. And God, I pray that you would bring these ladies back next week so that we could continue this discussion. God, we thank you so much for this opportunity, and we pray these things in Jesus' name. Amen.